Hello and welcome to Golden Geography. Today we're going to be looking at exploring oceans, part of the OCR A-level geography specification. And most specifically, we're going to be looking at the oil spill, the BP oil spill that took place in the Gulf of Mexico. So here we are thinking about the impacts on the physical environment and the marine environment, marine ecosystems of the Gulf of Mexico. Impacts on human activities such as fishing, tourism, and impacts on the management of the oil spill and the impacts that management technique had. So let's start with just a little bit of background. Deepwater Horizon event, it's sometimes referred to as well. You can see on the map here where the oil rig was, just off the coastline, not too far from New Orleans. And you can see as well the dark shaded area is the area over which the oil spilt. So it does extend along the coastline of several states. Predominantly you're looking at Louisiana, Mississippi and Alabama, but also it goes out to sea and has been caught in some of those currents, particularly the loop current, which means its movement has been quite extensive. The event itself happened on the 20th of April 2010. There was a gas released from this deep well and an explosion, and then as a consequence of that, oil started to spill out. People were injured and people died. This was a real tragedy for the industry and for the people of America. Real sad events happened from here and running on for many, many days afterwards. There was an initial fire that burnt for 36 hours. The rig itself sank, and as a consequence there was a lot of hydrocarbons, a lot of oil that leaked out into the Gulf of Mexico. And it took a very long time before they could plug the well and stop the oil from escaping. So what did that do to the physical environment and some of those marine ecosystems? Well, as I said earlier, it covered several states, and if you look at the coastline, it's not a particularly flat coastline. There's lots of little bays and inlets that made it quite difficult. It meant that the oil got really into these kind of nooks and crannies of the coastline. 3.19 million barrels of oils went out over a period of 87 days into this marine environment. And it was coming up from a well a mile below the surface of the ocean, so it could spread over a significant area. Large area, 130 miles wide, 130 miles long, 70 miles wide. And as a consequence of that, because it was such a large spill, it did travel across the Gulf of Mexico, did impact not just the American coastline, but beyond that too. Well, where did the oil go? Right, the spill happened. We find that we've got areas that were coastal, so the oil did go onto those coastal zones. It did go onto beaches. It went onto marshlands. It got tied up into those coastal regions. It did get into the water column too, so it did impact marine species within the water column and deep sea communities too, because it came from a very deep location within the ocean itself. So not just a coastal impact, but significant throughout the ocean here. It had impacts over a vast area. So what did it do? Well, here you can see some of those impacts. We have at the top an impact of a bird covered by oil. So any marine animal that was within the waters or relied on water, oceanic water, was impacted, was covered by oil, which meant that either they would die because they couldn't function, or they got caught up with the oil on their feathers and therefore could not move. We can see that it impacted ecosystems beyond that. We have crabs and fishing industries that we can see the wildlife on the map at the bottom, spreading right the way across to Florida and Key West. So significant impacts on a wide variety of organisms. And again, here you can see some of the fish that were impacted. It put 8,332 different species at risk. So what did it do to human activities such as fishing and tourism? Well, in terms of the fishing, it put a stop to that immediately. Obviously, people were very aware of the spill itself. It was in the news instantly, and it did have an impact on the fishing industry. People did not want to eat fish. It wasn't safe to go out and fish. And that lasted for several years. The initial cost was estimated to be at 2.5 billion to the fishing industry. In terms of tourism, again, news coverage meant that people were very aware of what was happening, didn't want to go on holiday to beaches that were covered in oil. And again, they were estimating the cost of that at 23 billion. So how was it managed? Well, it's difficult. It was very difficult. Large areas, lots of difficult oceanic conditions to deal with. But BP took responsibility. It wasn't just them as an organisation. The well was actually owned by a different company. There's lots of different companies and organisations involved. But BP stepped up and paid for a lot of the cleanup. They used a whole range of different techniques, from using skimmers, in situ burning, dispersants, all trying to break up the oil. And in many places they were effective, but also many, the oil just got into the ecosystem and has been there ever since. It's evidence within the sedimentary records found within the Gulf of Mexico now. So if you dig into the sea floor, you will find areas where the oil has been trapped. So they did their best, they did a lot, but there is still evidence of the oil spill there. Okay, quick quiz. Pause the video, see if you can answer these questions. There we go. Here are your answers. Okay, and here we have 3 questions which you could use the oil spill to help answer. Okay, thank you very much.